Please welcome Kamini Asola, Country Manager at Amazon Web Services.
Goedemorgen and bienvenue. It's my pleasure to welcome you today to this Benelux Transformation Day. We have a very enthusiastic audience here, and we're really excited to welcome you to a day with an agenda that is packed full of content, with over 25 sessions spread over the course of the day and 12 featured speakers. We hope that you will not only be inspired by their stories, learn to understand what opportunities the cloud can bring for you, but more importantly, to learn from each other, as well as to, of course, learn from our partners. We have 18 partners exhibiting in their solutions in the Partner Expo, which is just over there, and we hope you will take the opportunity to go over to them and explore what they can do to help you along your journeys. So, to start, we will have the keynote in a couple of minutes. We have two customer speakers, Royal Friesland Campina and Binder, who will be sharing their experiences with you. And over the course of the day, we have 10 other speakers spread across the various breakout sessions. This event, of course, would not have been possible without the support of our sponsors, up there. And of course, many of you here in the audience have perhaps attended an event before. We hope that this particular event today will help you to dive a lot deeper into the transformative opportunities presented by the cloud. Okay? AWS today, okay. AWS today is a large and rapidly growing business. We are seeing very exciting growth across all the segments. And if you look at our most recent numbers, 47% year-on-year growth, that makes us into a $14 billion run rate business. So, we're seeing adoption across all of the different segments. We have millions of active customers, including a large number of startups, with a selection presented here. And, here is just a little snapshot of some of the thousands of enterprises that are well on their way, many of which are prominent Dutch customers, as you will see. So when it really comes down to it, every imaginable business segment is now using AWS in a meaningful way. And we hope that your takeaway from today is to see how and of course, learn from our customers, but also take away for you how the cloud can help you in innovating, in driving efficiencies, and ultimately being more agile. So without further ado, let me introduce to you our Vice President for Innovation, Paul Meisner, who will be here in a few moments to deliver the keynote speech. He will talk about how we innovate at Amazon.com. And of course, if you'd like to learn more about it, come and hear from the team. We do have a panel at 3:15 that will happen in one of the breakout sessions that looks at the life at AWS. Yeah? So let me just welcome Paul, who will come onto the stage now.
Well, thanks, Kamini, very much, and welcome, everyone. Good morning. It's really a delight to have you all here for Transformation Day here in Benelux. I'm here to talk to you about innovation, and in particular, how we go about and think about innovation at Amazon. I've been with the company for over 17 years. I've seen it grow considerably, but the way we do things at the company really hasn't changed all that much. Now, to be clear from the outset, this is the way we innovate at Amazon. It's not to suggest that this is the only way to innovate, but it's just the way we do. But I also hope that you might listen in on a couple of the things that we do and maybe perhaps apply them to your own enterprise. Now, Obviously, some aspects of innovation rely on luck, right? Accidental innovations. You stumble across some really cool idea, you develop a new technology sort of accidentally, and it's successful and you delight your customers. That's great, but you can't rely on that long term. That's not sustainable, right? So you have to figure out a way to sustain innovation at your companies, your enterprises. And I'm going to talk to you about the way we do it at Amazon. But innovation itself has to be based on experimentation, right? Because if you're doing something truly new and innovative, you have to experiment with it. And an experiment, importantly, has to be able to fail, right? If you do an experiment and it can't fail, you know how it's going to turn out. It's not really an experiment. You're doing something else, maybe demonstrating an experiment. Listen, most of you probably had some kind of a science class in high school, at least, probably in college as well. But you were doing, say, a chemistry experiment, and you mixed some things together, and they all came out just like you planned. Well, that really wasn't an experiment. It was called one, but that wasn't an experiment. It was basically a demonstration of what was an experiment probably 200 or 300 years ago. So we're going to talk about how experimentation and failure is very much a part of innovation at Amazon, but I want to start with somebody else here. This is someone who may be familiar to you. And 100 years ago, a century ago last year, he proposed something called the general theory of relativity. This isn't the E equals MC squared thing, which he had done a decade before. But the startling prediction that came out of the general theory of relativity in 1916 was that a massive object will actually bend light. That seems kind of surprising, right? And so I've got a little laser pointer here, and if I pointed at this table over there, that light is bent by the mass of the table. Well, indetectably so. There is no way that tiny little mass will bend light in a way that we could ever measure. This building isn't massive enough. This country isn't massive enough. The continent, the Earth, is not massive enough. However, there is the sun. The sun is massive enough to bend light. And so there was an experiment proposed by which you would look up at the sun, and a star that should be behind it would be visible because the light from that distant star would be bent by the sun's mass. Pretty cool. Well, you obviously see the problem with this, right? The sun is really bright. You can't see stars except during a solar eclipse. So just 3 years after the theory of relativity was proposed, there was a solar eclipse, and sure enough, there were some measurements made, and there were stars detected that should have been behind the sun and invisible, but were visible. So there it was. And at the time, Einstein became an overnight sensation. He was actually a celebrity as a result of this one experiment. But what did this experiment do? At the time, and even sometimes today you'll hear it said, that this proved Einstein's general theory of relativity. That's not what it did. What it did do was disprove the theories of light coming from Huygens, a Dutch astronomer, and Newton, an English astronomer. They had postulates that light was more or less always traveling in a straight line, not to be diverted. These guys were disproved. Einstein wasn't proved, they were disproved. Experimentation can never prove something to be right. It can only prove things to be wrong. All right, another example. Our conception of the atom 100 years ago was basically a billiard ball. It was a solid, indivisible mass. You couldn't get it any smaller. And then all of a sudden, an electron was discovered. Whoa, that means that an atom has an internal structure. And because the electron was negatively charged, and atoms often are neutrally charged, there was a thought that there must be some kind of a goo, a paste, or a pudding of positively charged matter in which the electrons are embedded. A little bit later, it was discovered, no, there's actually a nucleus, a positively charged nucleus, and the electrons orbit around it. And then it was discovered that there were some neutrally charged things in the nucleus as well. So you had protons and neutrons. Ultimately, they're made of quarks and so forth. The point is this, that at every point along that sequence of understanding within the past 100 years of the atom, the current theory is never proved correct. The prior theories were proved incorrect. Again, experimentation can prove failure, not success. One more example here. This is a favorite of mine. This is a rendition of the Milky Way galaxy in which we live. And at the time, 100 years ago, this was thought to be the universe. The universe was our galaxy. Everything in it, all the stars, the planets, and those little patches of fuzziness, including the ones that look like pinwheels, those were all within our galaxy. And Georges Lemaitre, a Belgian scientist priest, he proposed the Big Bang Theory before Hubble did. So I think it's a little known fact. He gets a little recognition in history, but he's the guy who first proposed it. Well, fast forward until about a year ago, and the new postulate is that the number of galaxies in the universe is, get ready for this, between 1 and 2 trillion with a T. So we've gone, in 1 century, we've gone from 1 galaxy to 1 to 2 trillion. This is not a rounding error. This is a fundamental reconceptualization of what we think about the universe. This is the same thing that goes on in technical innovation, where you need to experiment and you must be willing to have things fail, to be falsified. Okay, so what's this thing? You ever seen this? This little device, it's cost a couple $2 billion. That little device exists not far from here, in American terms at least. It's outside of Geneva. It's called the Large Hadron Collider, fancy name, but the idea is that it's an atom smasher, and this is how we currently research subatomic particles, and including the Higgs boson, which this thing displayed, we'll call it that, a couple of years ago. Well, 2 years ago this month, a paper was published by the teams working with the Large Hadron Collider. And by the way, AWS supports a lot of that work there, does a lot of the number crunching for the Large Hadron Collider work. But this particular paper, it suggested a more precise measurement of the mass of the Higgs boson. Okay. It's about 7 or 8 pages long, which is fairly compact for a scientific paper. But the number of co-authors for this paper had to be listed, just their names and their institutions. It took them something like 23 pages to list. There were over 5,000 co-authors to this paper. Well, all right, where am I going with this? The point is this: how do we at Amazon balance the innovations of lone inventors of a century ago, the genius, the ideas of individuals, and I include Marie Curie in there, one of my favorite scientists of all time. How do we, in a company that is now something like 350,000 people, how do we maintain the spirit of the lone innovator, the inventor, the people with the great ideas, with innovation at scale of today versus that 5,000 author paper? How do we do it? Well, it might be interesting to know that we do it with pizza. We actually, when we have a particular problem that needs to be addressed, a challenge, an opportunity that we want to take a really hard look at, we will assign a group of individuals that add a number that could be comfortably fed with 2 large pizzas. You might say, well, that's really quaint, kind of quirky, weird, but there's a reason for this. 2 pizzas. If you had 3 or 4 people working, that's too much pizza, right? If you had like 13 or 14 people, that's not enough pizza. So somewhere in that range is the number of people who ought to be working on specific innovations. That's the point. And you might say, well, Amazon, gee, why don't you just assign a number like 8? 8 people should work on groups like this. Well, what happens if those 8 people are working and you're like 2 months into the project and you discover, we really need some expertise on machine learning or artificial intelligence. And we've got this PhD down the hall. She's really smart. She knows this stuff. Well, we can't put her on this team because that would mean 9. Well, that's stupid, right? So sure, she can join the team. Now the team is 9. That makes a lot of sense. But then you might say, well, Paul, why don't you just have no cap? You could get more expertise with 10, more with 12, more with 40, and so forth. Well, the problem is that there's a real diminishing return. At some point, the communications problems within a team grows to the point where extra expertise doesn't work. It actually thwarts, it makes too much bureaucracy. And so here we are, a company of 350,000 individuals, but we're assigning 2 pizza teams to work on our most cutting-edge innovations. Okay, what's another example? The 6-page narrative. Important decisions at Amazon are not made based on PowerPoint presentations. I'm giving you one today, but you don't have to decide anything. They're made in the context of a narrative that we force the proposers of a decision to write. This does a couple of things. First of all, I'll tell you, this is really interesting. This is all the way to the top of the company. When a decision needs to be made, the group making the decision, let's say there are 7 or 8 individuals, they will have an hour-long meeting, come together in a room, they meet for an hour, and at the beginning of the hour, for the first 30 minutes, they just read. Absolute silence. Just reading for 30 minutes. And at the end of 30 minutes, everybody says, okay, are you done reading? Yeah, we're done. Let's discuss. So for the next 30 minutes, there's a discussion, some questions, answers, and a decision. Now, what this does is it forces everybody in the room, first of all, to read the document, right? Because you can't just say, oh, forgot to read it, it didn't do the homework. But it also level sets everybody, because somebody that read it just before the meeting is going to have it much more freshly in their mind than someone who read it 2 weeks ago. If everybody reads it right there, right next to one another, then you're all level set going into this. The other piece I think is even more important is the writing of the document. When you write in text, Amazon is a very written company, by the way. You wouldn't necessarily think this. Maybe this is our bookish background. But when you write down this text, you have to take a stand on things. If you write a sentence of prose, it has a noun and a verb, and you have to decide what you mean. You can't just throw a bullet up on a board and say, well, yeah, that's the bullet, please make a decision. That's not the point at all. So this is another method by which we innovate at Amazon. Now, obviously, there's much more that goes into this, right? And so I'm going to talk about this right now. We have at Amazon what we call our leadership principles. And these are the tenets by which we operate. They govern things like evaluating job candidates. For judging our performance, at least annually. These are available, by the way, on our websites, so you can find them, and there's actually a little bit more detail for each of these. But these are what would govern how we make decisions. And again, this is not necessarily the right way to do it. It's the way we do it at Amazon. And so I'm not suggesting that if you don't have these leadership principles, somehow you can't innovate. That's not the point. This is the way we do it. And of these 14, it really feels like 3 stand out among the rest, at least in the context of innovation and maybe more broadly. First and foremost, this is an easy one, is customer obsession. If anything else, Amazon is a customer company. That's what we do. We do customers. That's, obviously we do technology, we do retail, we do marketplace, we do cloud, all these things, but we are at base a customer company. And one way that customer obsession is manifested is a process we call working backwards. That is to say, today, when we have a proposed product or service for the future, maybe it's 18 months, maybe it's 3 years from now, maybe it's 5 years from now, we have an idea for that proposed product or service, and today we will write a press release and a detailed FAQ to be released then in the future. So we actually go through the very detailed writing of the release and the FAQ. Well, what does that do for us? Well, first of all, that holds us accountable. It says that, that product or service that we're deciding today to work on, we're going to stick with it by having something in writing, imagining that that's what's going to go out to the press and the public, therefore, at some point in the future. So it holds us accountable, it keeps the goal in mind, because, 2 years into it, you might say, yeah, that was really hard. Maybe that's not what we really wanted to do. Let's do something else instead. That's not how it works. We've got ourselves accountable, and it's a set of goals. Secondly, it acknowledges something that's really kind of cool, if at the same time daunting, which is that it's impossible to do that thing today. We recognize that when we set a goal for ourselves in that press release and that FAQ, that we need to invent stuff that doesn't exist today. It can't be done. And we're going to do it. So we're sort of committing to figuring out how to get there. The third thing about this process, which I think is very helpful, is one that it's written in customer terms, right? This is announcing to customers what's in it for them when this new product or service launches. And that means, along the way, it's up to us to figure out all the complicated stuff that goes into it, develop an API, build this new kind of device, blah, 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 all these things. But ultimately, it's in customer language because that's our goal, is to serve our customers with a new product or service. So a couple of years ago, I had the pleasure of working on such a working backwards process, drafting the press release and FAQ, and it had to do with Amazon Prime Air, which is our future drone delivery service, and I thought you might want to just take a look at this thing.
Amazon is developing a service to use drones to safely deliver packages to customers in 30 minutes or less. It's called Prime Air. We've started a new private trial for customers in the Cambridge area of England, and on December 7th, we completed our first delivery. Customers will choose from a selection of thousands of items tucked away in a Prime Air fulfillment center located just over the horizon from their homes. We have been operating fulfillment centers for quite a while now, but this one is unlike all the rest. These modest-looking buildings contain innovative Prime Air technology. Here's how it works. Moments after receiving the order, an electrically powered Amazon drone makes its way down an automated track and then rises into the sky with the customer's package on board. These drones are autonomous. From takeoff to landing and return, they operate completely on their own. Cruising quietly below 400 feet, carrying packages up to 5 pounds, and guided by GPS, our systems are designed to find their destinations safely. Within 30 minutes of placing the order, the customer receives their package. For this initial trial, customers can choose from the latest tech gadgets to their dog's favorite biscuits. We will use the data gathered during this beta test and the feedback provided by customers to expand the private trial to more customers over time. We're starting with 2 customers now, and in the coming months, we'll offer participation to dozens of customers living within several miles of our UK facility, and then growing to hundreds more. After that, well, it'd be easy to say, the sky's the limit. But that's not exactly true anymore, is it?
Well, so cool stuff, huh? I mean, the technology is really, really cool. It's hard. I mean, the challenges involved in doing this are enormous. But again, it's part of this customer obsession and working backwards. With respect to Prime Air, we're working on a variety of different vehicles. We recognize our customers live in different circumstances, and so we probably will need a fleet of different kinds of vehicles to help serve them. And it's really easy to get taken in by the technology. I mean, think about this thing by itself knows where to go, what to do when it gets there, make a decision about whether or not to make the delivery based on safety or other conditions, and then either make the delivery or not, and then return to the warehouse. That is really, really cool. But, you know, the star of that video is not the drone. The star of the video is Richard, right? Here's a person who needed some items delivered to him within 30 minutes of ordering. He got it within 13. But within 30 minutes of order, that was it. It's as simple as figuring out what the customer wants, and in this circumstance, a really rapid delivery, and we're fulfilling it using drones. So again, it's this whole working backwards doctrine. At AWS, it turns out that something like the vast majority of the new items that we're working on, the new services that we're working on, come from suggestions from customers like you. And we work backwards from that suggestion. How do we accommodate what you guys need? We work backwards from that to today, and then invent our way towards that point. Okay, well, that's customer obsession. I mentioned there are 2 other leadership principles that apply particularly to innovation. One is a little bit difficult to say. It's easier to read it, and we'll take a look at it here. It's are right, comma, a lot. Well, of course we don't want to be wrong. I mean, no one wants to be stupid, right? So we want to be right. That's good. So we want the team within Amazon to be right. But there's that comma, a lot. It doesn't say are right. It doesn't say are right all the time. It doesn't even say are right most of the time. It says are right a lot. And the implication is that it's okay to be wrong. Now, we're not encouraging, our employees, my colleagues, to be stupid about things, but we encourage them to experiment. And it's okay to experiment and fail at it. To actually to do an experiment, as I said before, it has to be able to fail or it's not an experiment. You're not actually trying something new if you know exactly what's going to happen. And so being wrong on occasion is perfectly fine at Amazon. And so we have lots of experience with failure. There have been many failures along the way. One particular failure that arrived about the time that I was joining the company is something I'll tell you about. We actually have in here something that is, we expect our employees to actually work to falsify what they think is right, to actually work to disconfirm their own beliefs. So it's not just a matter of saying, oh, I'll accept it if somebody else shows me that I'm wrong. No, we actually individually have to work on trying to figure out if we're wrong. And we actively do this, and this is part of experimentation. It's a willingness to fail. So we experiment, we're willing to fail, and this also involves long-term thinking. And in the interim, a willingness to be misunderstood. The services that I was thinking of that are which were massive failures at the time, ended up after 2 failures with a success. And so here's how it went. About the time I joined the company, 99, 2000 time frame, we had, believe it or not, an auction site. I don't know if anybody remembers this, but we actually experimented with auctions. And what happened is we were roundly criticized for this idea of having an auction site. The investment community, Wall Street, said, wait, you guys are trying to sell stuff at retail, and then you're going to allow third parties to come on your site and undercut your sales? That's stupid. Well, we didn't view it that way. We thought that, gee, our buyer customers will really like the increased selection. It turned out that auctions was just a massive failure for a lot of reasons. It didn't work. And despite our best intentions, it failed. So we tried the next thing, which was what we called Z-shops. And it was similar to auctions, except it was fixed price sales. And so we would allow sellers to come into our website, basically our store, and sell right alongside our merchandise. The problem was it really wasn't right alongside the merchandise. It was a separate, segregated corner of the website, which meant that a buyer customer coming to the website, she would have to first search our retail offerings, see if she could find what she was looking for, and if it wasn't there, then she'd have to go and search in this other corner called Z-shops. Well, that's stupid. That was massively inconvenient to her. That didn't make a lot of sense. And yet at the same time, Wall Street was saying, wait a minute, you're allowing new goods to be sold on your store? Imagine that in a physical store. Imagine going into a high street store and they say, well, there's a back room over there where other sellers are selling stuff too. So if you don't find what you want, in our store, you can look in the back room. Well, for the inconvenience of having to look in that back room, Z-shops was also a failure. But then what we did is we said, okay, why don't we let our sellers sell right alongside us? And so now this is the familiar, what we call, it's jargony, sorry, it's the single detail page. What it means is that if you go and you search for a guitar on Amazon.de, you find a guitar, and it's offered by a variety of sellers. Sometimes our retail business, sometimes third parties, often, usually, both. And what happens is that there's actually price competition happening right on the site. Again, lots of pushback from the investment committee. This is crazy. This would never happen in a high street store where you could walk into, there's the guitar racks they're trying to sell, and you walk in with your own guitar trying to sell it and put it right alongside and maybe have a lower price. That would never happen, but that happens daily now on Amazon. And it's proved to be a huge success. Fully half the things sold through Amazon websites are not sold by Amazon retail. So it took a while for us to get this right after a couple of failures, and so that was, 1 out of 3? Not a bad batting average for those of you who know baseball, but in this instance, we failed 2/3 of the time, finally ended up with a success. Our write a lot. There's this passion for invention. We're willing to fail. Same holds true at AWS. And we're also willing to be misunderstood. So this business with the investment community in this example meant that we just had to kind of suck it up and say, we're sticking by this. We really think it's going to be good for customers in spite of what the investment community thinks. The last leadership principle that really comes to mind in my view as being particularly important in the context of innovation, if not everything else at Amazon, it seems is probably the most obvious one, and that is simply to deliver results. So all the obsessing over customers in the world, all the being right about what to do for customers won't count at all if we don't actually deliver results to our customers. So it's super important. We have a commitment to operational excellence, meaning that all this behind-the-scenes stuff that we're working on, all that working backwards, et cetera, ends up in the hands of our customers. And we've had some successes here, delivering results, but it really is an acknowledgement that even though there are occasionally setbacks in trying to deliver results to our customers, we'll power through them and figure out a way. And so here are some examples. This is just a handful of examples of the things that we've been able to deliver to our customers over the years, and it's not a complete list, and there will be more things, but you have to recognize how much failure there was along the way to get to this point. And now we're very happy with the successes. You see up there Marketplace, we talked about that. There's AWS and many other things. And so it really is this commitment to operational excellence that is super important at Amazon. The 3 points that I have talked to you about are these. Let me suggest to you one thing, and in closing, I want to acknowledge again that this is the way Amazon does business. It's not to suggest this is the only way to sustain innovation in some enterprise, including yours. But I would suggest that there are a couple of easy things that I've suggested today that, or discussed, that you should try, right? I think the notion of a 2-pizza team would be very easy to implement. Try it out, and if it doesn't work, there's not much risk in that. We call that a type 2 decision, where there's very little risk in trying something new, and if it doesn't work, you don't have to do it anymore. Try the 2-pizza team. Try the 6-page narrative. The next time you're faced with a decision in your organization, whether at the top, enterprise-wide, or just within your group, have the team that's proposing the decision write a narrative. They may not like you for a little while because it's hard to do, but it makes the decision-making much easier. And then sit around that table and read the narrative all together, and then discuss it. Give it a try. It may not work for you, but it's worth a shot, it seems to me. And the one that I really think that you ought to try, each and every one of you in this room, I mean everybody in this room can do this, is write yourself a working backwards document. Write a press release, as if you're talking to your customers about what you're working on or what you want to accomplish. So maybe you have some internal goal that you want to accomplish in 18 months. Today, or this weekend, or next week, write out a press release announcing how this is going to help your enterprise's customers, what you're doing, and all the cool things that they're going to benefit from. Have an FAQ, and then stick it there, and just picture it being released to the public in 18 months, and then consult it every so often. As you're working on this, and you're in busy jobs, you're doing all sorts of other things, but as you're working towards that particular goal, consult those documents. They're there to help and help guide you. Harder to do, I think, is a matter of enterprise culture. Everybody has a different one. We have our own peculiar one. It is ours. But these things about being willing to fail, that's hard to do. I get that. And we've made big bets along the way at Amazon, and we will continue to make big bets. But it turns out that several failing big bets get paid off handsomely by one successful big bet. So long as you're not betting the company, and so I hope you never wait until it's too late and then you have to do something. Right now, make some big bets. Go through these processes. It's hard because nobody wants to fail, but it's part of experimentation. And if you really want to innovate for your customers, you need to be willing to experiment and thus willing to fail. I thank you very, very much for your attention. We're delighted to have a couple of customers that are going to come up and talk about their experience. We have Binder is a startup. And then RFC is going to come up, and a very much older company, but also one that is thinking about innovation and is working very closely with the team at AWS. So I'm very excited to hear their stories. Thank you very much.
Please welcome Gavan Horton, Global Director Operations at Royal Friesland Campina.
Good morning, everybody. As you can see from the slides behind, my name is Gavin Horton. I am the Director of IT Operations for Royal Friesland Campina. I'm going to spend the next couple of minutes telling you a little bit about our approach to cloud, and in particular, our experience so far with AWS, what we've seen, what we've learned, or, as I like to call it, this is our journey from the fields to the cloud. So before I talk about our experiences, let me just start a little bit with who we are and what we do. So we're Friesland Campina. What do we do? Many of you in here know us as a brand, as a company. We process 10 billion kilos of raw milk on a yearly basis. We're owned by 20,000 or 19,000 farmers. This means we're cooperative. We actually own the farms. We own the cows. We process milk in 32 different locations around the world. And what's very, very important about the fact that we're a cooperative is this gives us the ability to have a grass-to-glass mentality. And what that means is we control the quality of our products from the grass of the fields right to the glass of the consumer. So when you take a glass of our milk or a pot of our yogurt, you understand we know the quality. We follow the chain all the way from the cows right to your table. And we do that to 100 different countries around the world. And we reach millions of customers on a daily basis. So this is what we do, and this is what we're good at. But there's a few things we don't do, and a few things we don't want to do. So what are those? Well, very, very quickly, I don't ever want to worry about systems performance. Now, I could spend 10 minutes explaining why that is, but I think everybody here doesn't want to worry about systems performance either. And we can, with the cloud, we can avoid that. I don't want to wait for new servers. You know, in the old days, you used to put through a request for a quotation, you used to get a quotation, you used to sign it. It takes time. This is not the 1980s. When I want a server, I want a server. I don't want to lose focus. And what I mean by that is we're a dairy company. We're good at what we do. But there's things that we're not particularly good at. It's not that we're bad, but there are specialists. We want to focus on what we are really, really good at, and we want to work with people who do the same. And AWS is one of those companies. And I don't want to miss out new technology. A couple of examples of that. You all hear Internet of Things, data lakes, big data, digitization. In the old days, it was quite difficult to get into those and to get onto those tracks because you'd have to order servers, you'd have to put up, install applications, configure those servers. Nowadays, if I want to try something, I can go to AWS and get a pre-configured AMI with the service I want. I can use it for 2 days, and I can throw it away if I don't like it. If I do like it, I can go global in minutes. So it makes it easy for me to fail, which I tend to be pretty good at, actually. So how did our journey start? It's quite a big thing when you're talking about the cloud. If you're not experienced in the cloud, everybody uses it, everybody says the cloud, and sometimes it's a little bit more like a fog than a cloud. So when you're starting to go in, you need to look at the water and you need to test it, and that's what we decided to do. We wanted to test the water. So how do we test the water? Well, you dip your toes in. You want to see if the water is warm, if it's comfortable. And this is what we did. So we worked with a company called Terra Alto. They're a small niche consultancy. And we worked with them. We took 20 of our non-critical applications, and we put them into the cloud. And we put them onto AWS. We wanted to see what would happen. The projects went in. The systems went live. Everything's working. But we kind of got minimal savings. And the reason for this was these weren't particularly expensive systems anyway. So we brought them into the cloud. The most important thing is not the savings that we got, but the experience that we gained in moving into the cloud. We're still working with Terra Alto. We're still pushing on in this initiative. So after we've dipped our toes in the water, we decided it was OK. We were willing to give it another chance. We were willing to go further. So we waded in. And wading in, what we did was we worked with a company called Lemongrass. We took all of our SAP legacy systems, and we moved them to AWS. We did so in 9 months. For 170,000 euros was the project cost. It came in under budget, and we have an annual saving of 204,000 a year. So that's a return on investment of less than 1 year. So we waded in. It was successful. After wading in, after dipping our toes, we decided to go for a swim. So what does going for a swim look like? We are now taking our core SAP systems into AWS. We're doing that with the assistance of Lemongrass, and Capgemini will be the run partner at the end. As we move these systems in, what we're looking for is we're looking for differences in performance, in cost, we think we're going to get a 40%, and that's a pretty conservative figure, reduction in our hosting costs. It's about a 1.5 million per year reduction for a project that's costing us just under 2 million. It's a pretty good return on investment. But this is not why we're doing this. We are not doing this for cheaper hosting. We're doing this so that we can run faster, longer, and smarter. I'll give you a couple of examples of what it's like to swim in these agile waters. First thing, it's faster. During a project, we had a recent request in the last sort of 3 or 4 months to produce an entire SAP environment for a testing process, and we hadn't planned it. And we had to do it now. And normally, that would have taken me about 2 to 3 weeks between requests for an order, signing a quotation, waiting for the service to arrive. With AWS, we had the environment within 48 hours. And that was done by Lemongrass. And the next time, it'll be faster, because 48 hours was the first time we've ever done this. So swimming in agile waters is faster. It's also we can swim for longer. Before AWS, we were shutting down our systems on average about 78 hours every year. Now, 78 hours doesn't sound like a lot, but it's actually just over 3 days. After AWS, we're looking at 8 hours per year for maintenance. And this means sort of performance maintenance, adding in new resources, adding in new disks. We can now go for 8 hours. What that means is we gain 70 hours a year. 70 hours is nearly 3 days. 3 days over the course of a year is literally just under 1%. So for a 1.7 to 2 million euro project, we have increased the available uptime for an 11 or 12 billion euro company by 1%. That's transformative. So we're running longer. We're also we're smarter. Cloud partners. One of the first things I noticed with my the first 3 invoices I got from the cloud, from AWS, Terra Alto, and Lemongrass. Immediately after getting in the invoice, I got a phone call from my service representative explaining to me what I had to do next time to make sure the invoice is cheaper. I don't get that in any other environment, so it's smarter. So what are the risks? Well, there's a couple of risks with everything. Nobody's perfect. The first risk is don't treat it as cheaper hosting. If you're going into the cloud for cheaper hosting, you're making a mistake. You can get cheaper hosting, but there's more to be gained. Train. That should be pretty obvious. Keep training. Also, don't forget to turn the lights off. It's really, really easy to commission services. You can go from 1 to 50 servers in seconds. You can also forget to turn them off again. And work with somebody knowledgeable. Work with somebody who knows the cloud. It's a big area. Amazon are releasing hundreds of innovations every year. If you don't work with somebody who knows those innovations, who knows the market, you're going to miss out on those innovations. So, finally, the 3 stages of our approach. We dipped our toes into the water. We tested it. We started wading in. We moved our archives in. And now we're going for a full swim. We're going into the cloud. So what do we see? From the left to the right, the more you put in, the more you get out. Testing the water, we got some savings. Moving SAP archives, we're getting 204,000 euros per year savings. But the final stage, the full adoption, going for a swim, that is going to be transformative. That is changing the way not just we do business, but our business does business. So my message to you, my final message is if you're sitting on the edge of the water and you're looking at the cloud, and I know it's a funny analogy, water and cloud, if you're looking at this and thinking, I'd like to get involved, what do? My advice is you grab a life jacket. And by a life jacket, I mean an experienced partner, somebody who knows what the water's like. And then come on in for a swim, because the water is lovely. Thank you very much.
Please welcome Roland Keitzer, CTO at Binder.
Good morning, everybody. When we started our company back in 2013, our first customers loved us for the new way we approached a relatively old market, digital asset management. We offer a truly cloud-based solution, which allows companies of any kind of size to store and manage all their digital assets, so think of video files, images, documents, to share them with colleagues and with clients, to communicate about branding guidelines, so that, for example, the logo is used in a consistent way across the board, and to integrate with e-commerce or CMS platforms, so that every platform uses the latest version of an asset. Next slide. Yeah, there it is. So some facts and figures about us. We have about 370 customers, of which are KLM, ExxonMobil, Puma. So customers with a focus on branding and marketing specifically. We have about 250 employees in 6 offices, and we have a year-to-year growth percentage of 350%. Last year, we managed to secure a Series A funding, which of course allows us to accelerate our growth even more. We have an active user base of 150,000 users and about 6.5 million assets stored. Of course, for our enterprise customers and for ourselves, security is very important nowadays. So last year, we managed to secure the ISO 27001 certification, and we're also HIPAA compliant, which is very important for American pharmaceutical clients. Now, since our start in 2013, we've grown a lot. We now have offices in 6 cities. Our main office is in Amsterdam. Our developers are based in Rotterdam and Barcelona. And we also have very cool offices in Boston, London, and Dubai. Now, what's funny is that a lot of people, and even Paul, who introduced me, still see us as a startup. Well, with 250 people working for us, 6 offices, we can't really call ourselves a startup, right? But I think it's because we still have the innovative and young mindset. Now, how did we keep that mindset going, growing from a small startup to where we are now? I will show you in a few steps. In 2013, we started with our product, and we made our first steps with AWS. And for those of you who don't know what Amazon S3 is, it's basically unlimited storage in the cloud. And this is one of the reasons we went for Amazon, we went for the cloud. Of course, for a product which is all about storing files, storing big files, yeah, unlimited storage is great. And this is really indicating for the relationship that we have with AWS. They allow us to focus on the things that we love to do. We love to develop cool features for our end users. We do not want to worry about replacing hard drives, worrying about disk space. Amazon S3 takes care of that for us. Same for RDS, which is basically managed database in the cloud. Anyone who has ever managed a database manually knows what pain it is to worry about backups, failovers. RDS really saves us a lot of hassle, so we're so very happy with that. Back then, we were hosted in a single region and did about 2 manual deployments per week, which of course was really stressful. But luckily, we managed to turn that around pretty quickly. Fast forward to 2015, we managed to become a global company by opening an office in Boston. We got some clients that had, for example, Logitech, who had marketing teams in California, Switzerland, and Japan, who wanted to use our portal from all over the globe in the most performant way. That's why we decided to host multiple clusters. We're now hosting in West Coast, East Coast, Frankfurt, Japan, and nowadays also Sydney region. They're all connected to each other so that everybody around the globe has the most, can upload files to Binder in the most performant way. We also have some local regions available, and this is really for the customers that have the need for data protection. So we have a Frankfurt cluster and a US-only cluster. Data that gets uploaded there, stored there, will not leave the borders of that country. Very important for our financial customers specifically. Route 53 failover is also one of the services that I would like to highlight, which is very valuable for our customers. Whenever there's a problem in one of the regions, for example, in the East Coast of the US, clients automatically get switched over to the West Coast without them even noticing. With the help of tools like Amazon CloudFormation, we're at a rate of about 35 deployments per week, so that customers will never have to wait until a new feature is released or a bug fix is put live. Now, 2017, in a relatively short time, we managed to deploy an infrastructure which is capable of handling any kind of load, any kind of time. Of course, the nice thing about our business about cloud, is that you're never done developing. The product is never finished. For longer, we were thinking, how can we make Binder smarter? Our users, they spend a lot of time uploading assets, categorizing the files, tagging them, setting up taxonomies even. And how cool would it be if we can help them somehow by giving them suggestions on relevant tags, for example? So what's in the image? If you see this image, for example, we already give the suggestions of that this woman is very happy, and she's smiling, apparently, and wearing sunglasses. This is very valuable for our customers and could save them a lot of time. Now, we calculated the time it would take to develop such a feature, because it's all about AI and deep learning, in about a year. So this is not only the time it would take to develop the feature, but also to train the model, to give it, to make sure that it actually returns some relevant results. Amazon Recognition was released, however. This is one of the AI deep learning services that Amazon released last year. And with the help of this great service, we managed to deploy it in 4 weeks. So compare that to 1 year. This was put live in 4 weeks from start to actually production deployment. Of course, yeah, our customers are very happy with this. Yeah, we get really positive responses. Right now, we analyze about 60K images per day, so it's a huge success. Now, I was asked not to make this presentation too technical, but I'm sure there are some technical people in the audience who would like to know how this actually works. So I won't let you down. It works as simple as this. A user uploads something to S3. Automatically, a Lambda event gets triggered. And Lambda is, for those of you who don't know, haven't heard about it yet, it's really cool. It's serverless computing. We just upload a script to the Amazon infrastructure where it runs. We don't have to set up a whole infrastructure, other scaling groups, health checks. It all runs in the Lambda environment. Calling the recognition API is just a REST call. And after that, we store it in our internal API. All authentication is done with Amazon KMS, so that we're sure that everything is stored securely. And yeah, that was it. So thank you a lot for your attention. If you have any questions, you can find us on biner.com. And thanks.